Hey, greetings from Las Vegas and welcome to week 13 of the pro football season. The playoff picture is starting to take shape. Teams are stepping up their game and so are we. Let's get you ready for a big week. Beat the Odds starts right now.
From our Las Vegas studios, this is Beat the Odds, sponsored by Superbook Westgate Las Vegas.
Well, hey, everybody. Welcome inside our Las Vegas studio. I'm Dave Hall.
And I'm Mariah Janos. As the calendar turns to December, we're getting a much clearer picture of the studs and the duds. Philly, San Francisco, Baltimore, and Kansas City, all studs.
Yeah, Carolina, Arizona, and New England, all duds. Sorry, Mariah.
Yeah.
The hoodie, not goody.
Yeah, burn the hoodie, I guess, while we're at it. Yeah, while those teams battle for the #1 draft pick, just about everyone else is still having a shot at the playoffs.
Yep, slim shot some, but they're still in it. Hey, coming up on today's show, Teddy and Jack will talk about that playoff picture, why some teams we thought would be good this year aren't, plus best bets, see if Detroit can bounce back from that Turkey Day debacle.
And we're taking a trip to the NFC South to see which teams with losing records could still make the postseason. Plus, Brandon Marshall is back to talk the legitimacy to Aaron Rodgers' return. I'll be back in a bit. Dave, take it away.
All right, thanks, Mariah. Let's welcome the boys back in. How you guys doing?
I'm recovering, but yeah, things are good. I mean, it was a long weekend. The general public did pretty well on Sunday, so all in all, everything's pretty good.
Yeah, I was going to say two things got crushed last week. Jack's calorie count.
It did not go well.
And the sports books. The Joes crushed this week.
Yeah, they sure did. I mean, the books got buried all weekend long. We're talking about favorites going 12-4. ATS was 12-3 heading into Monday night. And the favorites who failed to cover weren't exactly the favorites that the public falls in love with. Three of them sub-500 team: New England, Detroit, New Orleans, Minnesota, none of whom are big public teams. So the fact that those favorite covered wasn't a good week to be a bookmaker here in Las Vegas.
Yeah, and I think the important thing to remember, by the PSA, that if you did not win on Sunday as an average player and you're not following somebody that knows what they're doing consistently, you might want to totally relook at everything you're doing, because if you know, it should have been a get back on Sunday for most of the general public. And I know some guys that have been losing all month and lost on Sunday, so that's not a good combination for sure. There are trends we can
those people clearly not watching this show.
All they have to do is watch and they'll win more money.
Tell your friends to watch.
The last Sunday, though, I mean, it was really, really tough to get it across the line if you were handicapping. But if you were just playing the better team and didn't do just enough, not doing mascot battles, but knew just enough, you could make some money on Sunday.
Yeah.
Sure, and there were a couple of, bizarre games for the house to talk about. There was a really bad beat that we have to bring up with Zay Flowers getting the first down at the end of the game in L.A., Baltimore, and then proceeding to take the ball into the end zone, which was a nightmare for Bolts backers in that one. And of course, there was a legit middle last week as well. Another bad result for the house when you're talking about Buffalo available at +3.5 all week and Philly available at -2.5 before kickoff. No extra points in OT. That means Philly wins by exactly 3. That, not a good result for the house either.
Bottom line, nobody's going to cry for the house when they have a bad week because they have enough good weeks. And I think there should be penalties against kneeling down on the 1-yard line when you're trying to go in the end zone. So I'm okay with him getting in this end zone.
And his touchdown celebration was pretty sweet.
Right?
So.
He had one and a backup. So couldn't get a lot of people to participate in the first one.
Yeah. All right, well, thank you, fellas. As we talked about, Vegas sportsbooks getting spanked. It doesn't happen very often, so let's see how they're coping. Mariah is at the Superbook Westgate Las Vegas.
Thanks, Dave. I'm here with EVP of Superbook Operations, Mr. Jay Cornegay. Jay, happy belated Thanksgiving. A lot of games played throughout last week, a lot of wagers placed on those games, a lot of eyes on those games. How did you guys do here at the book?
Well, we started off on a good foot. We had Green Bay, upset Detroit in that first game, but it was pretty much downhill after that. You had Dallas covering, San Francisco and Miami covering on Black Friday, and then on Sunday it wasn't much better. We had a number of favorites covering, actually a record-tying amount of favorites covering on Sunday, so it was a rough weekend for the books.
Now, some breaking news this week. Aaron Rodgers off IR. He's coming back, folks, whatever that means. Will that have any impact on New York's futures odds?
Aaron Rodgers kind of brings a little smile to my face. I can't believe it. I'm a non-believer. But we'll monitor the situation and we'll adjust the odds accordingly. But right now, I still think it's a very big long shot for him to come back.
Now back to this week, a big game on Sunday. It's a rematch of the NFC Championship. Philly, San Francisco going head-to-head. What are you hearing about this game so far?
Great matchup. A lot of eyes have been on this for a long time now, probably ever since the schedule came out. It's a rematch of the NFC Championship game. It's open 3, dropped down to 2.5. We have some 3s out there, but I think 2.5 is the right number. We did see some sharp money come in on the over. That's been bumped up a little bit, but we expect a lot of money, a lot of action on this game.
All right, Jay, thank you so much. Dave, we'll send it back to you in studio.
All right, thanks, guys. You may have noticed Jack loves to pick unders on his best bets, and there's a good reason for that. The unders are crushing this season. Wait till you see these numbers.
Before we head to break, with 2 rushing touchdowns in Week 12, Philly quarterback Jalen Hurts set the league record for most games with multiple rushing touchdowns by a quarterback with 11. Whose record did he break? The answer after the break.
Beat the Odds is sponsored by Superbook Westgate Las Vegas.
Welcome back. Before the break, we asked you before Jalen Hurts, who previously held the record for most games with multiple rushing touchdowns by a quarterback. The answer, Cam Newton, who had 10 games with multiple rushing touchdowns.
Speaking of great athletes, Fat Jack made a bet on this show last week that he could make a 29-yard field goal. So here he is in his goofy jersey. Did Jack make it? Find out later in the show. Can't wait for that. All right, scan that QR code. It will take you to our website, beattheoddstv.com. Let's bring in a true athlete, the champ, Brandon Marshall. Okay, Brandon. Your kicker goes down. Your coach comes up to you. Brandon, I need a 29-yard field goal. Could you do it?
There's no way. Look, it's a different skill set to have to kick. First of all, look at his approach right there.
It was horrible.
There's no way that he's made it right now. I've actually made a 30-yard field goal, but I missed 2, and then I posted the one that I made.
Well, of course.
That's how you got to do it. You know
all right. Well, we'll find out how Jack did a bit later. Big news came out this week about Aaron Rodgers. He has been cleared to return to practice. As someone who played football a long time, certainly racked up your fair share of injuries. Do you think this is actually going to happen? Is Aaron Rodgers actually going to come back and play this season?
I think somebody's lying. Because he tore his Achilles in September, right? Mm-hmm. For them to open the window. Now, if they open the window, it's a serious thing. It's not like, oh, it's just for the, the propaganda. No, they opened the window for a real thing, right? So he couldn't have tore his Achilles, or he knows something that we don't, right? So for him to come back in 3 months after potentially 3 months after a torn Achilles,
right?
It's mind-boggling. There's no way.
Now, he did hedge it, saying, he'd have to be fully healthy, and his team would have to be in the playoff hunt, which, let's be honest, New York is not in the playoff hunt.
Right.
But, hey, we'll see.
We'll see. I mean, I don't know how that's going to happen. Like, me and my friends, my NFL buddies that's talked, we still don't, know how it's possible. We've all played football through college. There's no way that we've seen anybody tear an Achilles and come back that fast.
All right. Well, we'll find out if he actually does. I want to ask you, we've been talking a lot about playoff teams and how hard it is for teams to repeat and get back in the playoffs. About 7 new teams every year. You've been on teams that made it one year and didn't the next. From someone in the locker room, from the locker room perspective, what's the difference between a team that's successful and one that's not?
Well, what happened with us in Denver after we won, the big game, when Peyton Manning left, right? That was our biggest thing.
There you go.
So we switched. Our quarterback, situation went from Hall of Fame to, bottom of the barrel, if I'm being honest with you. So a lot of these teams that we're speaking about, they have the same quarterback year in and year out. Now it's tough to stay on top of the league consistently, right? Look at Buffalo, right? They had their window. They had their run. I truly believe their run is over. They're 6-6 right now.
Yeah.
They're finding ways to lose the game. They should have had that game against Philly.
Oh, geez,
so with the same team, right? Yes, they've had injuries, but at the same time, it's still tough to stay on top and to consistently make the playoffs.
Well, let's end with your team, Denver. Start of the year horrifically, gave up 70 points, and now they've got the longest winning streak in the league, 5 games.
Yeah.
Can they climb all the way back and make the playoffs?
It's funny because they're not doing it in a sexy way, right? Nobody looks at Denver and say, okay, look, they're flashy, they're sexy, this looks good. They're just finding ways to win. And the thing about their defense is they've been turning the ball over, right? Or they've been creating turnovers game after game, multiple turnovers, right? So that's what's catapulting this team into this category, right, of potentially making the playoffs. Win 5 games in a row, right? I'm excited. I'm ecstatic, you know, because my hopes for the season was in the dumps.
Of course.
Especially in the very beginning and when they started 0-3 and giving up 70 points. I was almost had the bag that I need to put over my face, but
the bag's off now.
I think they have the, you know, they have opportunity. Obviously, they have to have a lot go their way.
Sure.
But I think they have opportunity.
They put themselves in a position to do so. All right. Thank you to the field goal kicking Brandon Marshall. We learned something new about you today. Well, it seems a bit odd that someone nicknamed Fat Jack likes game with thin point totals, but here we are. Jack tells us why.
So this is normally the time when we try to take some general information that's been successful or productive early in the year, but be able to apply it going forward. And we've got a couple of trends that are really astonishing as far as covering the number. When you have totals since 2017 that are under 37, so a big sample size of games that have low totals. And we get this in college on the over with the threshold of high totals. But in pro football, when you have low totals, it's amazing how much those totals will go under. I love the unders this year, and we've been making a lot of money with them. 36-1 to the under when you have a total in the game of 37 points or lower. And they were 3-0 again last week. So that's something we can take going forward. There is one game this week. We have New York and Atlanta. Totals 34.5. Don't be afraid of those low totals because you have thresholds to how low you can set numbers. Maybe it should be lower, but you've got to get money on both sides of these games. So look for under in these games that are lower than 37, at least going forward. The other big one are the Monday Night Football, and we've had a lot of talk about this throughout the course of the season. But Monday Night Football, 12-1 this season to the under. Another one this year, not going to get me off of it. Jacksonville, they like to go conservative. Lawrence they've really tried to keep him at bay, I think, offensively for the most part. And Cincinnati with the backup quarterback, let's look under the total on Monday night as well.
And a little teaser ahead. I know Jack likes an under again in his best bet. Find out which game that is. All right, Teddy, let's bring you in. I was talking with Brandon earlier about the big turnover we see every year in terms of playoff teams.
Yeah, it feels like people are really surprised when you say half the playoff teams year in, year out on average don't make it back the next season. And that's been a long-term trend, 14 playoff teams out of 32 professional football teams. And the trend in recent years has been about half the teams don't make it back. Just look at the last couple of years. All right, in 2020, who made the playoffs and didn't the next year? Baltimore, Cleveland, Indy. Chicago was a playoff team not that long ago. Washington was too, New Orleans, Seattle. None of those teams made it back the following year. From 21 to 22, New England, remember when they were pretty good? That's been a while. Pittsburgh, Tennessee, Vegas was a playoff team, Green Bay, LA, Arizona. We're talking about teams that didn't make it back the next year. So if the playoffs started today, Buffalo, heavy hitter, they wouldn't be there. Cincinnati, heavy hitter, they wouldn't be there. LA, the Bolts, heavy hitter, they wouldn't be there. The G-Men, they're not going back. Tampa's not making it back. Minnesota hanging by a thread. Seattle hanging by a thread. This isn't different. This isn't unusual. You can expect about half the playoff teams year in, year out to regress from one season to the next.
And those trends have changed. It used to be where if you had played late in the season but not gotten all the way, you were going to have a drop-off. Now, what those teams have in common, there's a lot of those middle teams that are just pretty good. If you look up and down the list, it's not teams that are making deep runs into the playoffs the year before. Yeah. It's these, I just got in because I won the turnover battle in 2 or 3 more games. That's why professional football is so enjoyable to watch the entire season, because you have such a parity in the league.
Makes it more fun for sure. All right, so what would be a greater honor, being named MVP or being on this show, Beat the Odds? I mean, clearly this show. See which stud running back these two guys are going to be arguing about. It's our player prop showdown, and it's next.
Before we take another timeout, with 304 passing yards in Week 12, Houston quarterback C.J. Stroud tied Andrew Luck for most 330-plus yard passing games by a rookie. Who has the most? The answer after the break.
You're watching Beat the Odds, sponsored by Superbook Westgate, Las Vegas.
Welcome back. Before the break, we asked you who leads C.J. Stroud and Andrew Luck for most 300-plus yard passing games by a rookie. The answer, L.A. quarterback Justin Herbert, who threw for 300-plus yards 8 times during his 2020 rookie season. Making the postseason in this league is no easy task, especially this season where there are only a few teams that are major outliers. On the top, you got Philly. At the bottom, you got Carolina. And then there's just a jumble in the middle. But looking specifically at the NFC South, 3 of the 4 teams are all in step with one another as subpar teams looking to make a playoff push. Atlanta and New Orleans both with 5-6 records, and 1 game back is Tampa Bay at 4-7. Atlanta currently has the shortest odds to win the division and are also just 1 game back from the wild card spot. Winning the division would be preferable, though, as it solidifies a home playoff game. But New Orleans is right there in the conversation as well, followed by, yet again, Tampa Bay. There aren't even odds for Carolina at this point because, well, their season has been over. There's no coming back from a 1-10 record. One of these teams, Carolina side, will be crowned kings of the NFC South and make the postseason despite their mediocrity. Which got me wondering, how many teams have clinched a playoff berth with a losing record? Well, it was done just 1 year ago by a Tampa Bay team led by none other than Tom Brady. If anyone can take a losing team to the promised land, let's be real, it's Tommy Boy. But prior to that, it was Washington in 2020, Carolina in 2014, Seattle in 2010, Detroit and Cleveland in 1982. What a drop-off. Now, as for how these teams do once they've extended their season, the road ends in either the wild card or divisional round. No team with a losing record has ever made it to a conference championship, and in turn has never made it to the big game. While the NFC South teams may not seem appealing to watch with a race this tight down the stretch, it's certainly something to keep an eye on.
All right, these two haven't seen a gym since the invention of the forward pass, but no matter, it's Teddy against Jack in our player prop showdown. Today, it's running back Christian McCaffrey. Who wants to go first?
Go ahead, Teddy. You seem to be in love with him. Let's go ahead and talk about it.
I will. We talked about him at 20-1 to win MVP, and I don't think that line will be available after this week in Philadelphia. This week, we're going to look at Christian McCaffrey over 107.5 rushing and receiving yards combined, total yards in the game. Now, the most important factor in this handicap has nothing to do with Christian McCaffrey. It has to do with the defense he's facing, Philadelphia, that was on the field for 92 plays in last week's overtime game. That is an exhausted defense. And look, we're talking about a guy that gets 7 targets per game the last 4 and rushed for over this total by himself last week alone. Rushing and receiving yards combined, over.
They're giving money away, apparently. I mean, it sounds like they're giving money away. I think there's going to be better play out of the front 4 from Philadelphia. Their front 7 are all very, very fast. I think they're able to sustain him, keep him at bay enough, and a slow, grinding game out of Philly's offense will certainly limit his touches as well. Let's go under the 107.5.
Well, it's going to be fun to watch. That's for sure. Game of the weekend. Thanks, you two. So can Detroit bounce back from their Turkey Day disaster? Teddy has thoughts on that. Did Kansas City find their missing offense? Jack has thoughts on that. Their best bets are next.
Before we take our final timeout, with 2 touchdowns in Week 12, Tampa wideout Mike Evans moved into a tie for 6th most receiving touchdowns by a player in their first 10 seasons. Who does he still trail? The answer after the break. Welcome back. Before the break, we asked you, who does Tampa receiver Mike Evans still trail for the most receiving touchdowns by a player in their first 10 seasons? The answer, some current and future Hall of Famers: Jerry Rice, Randy Moss, Marvin Harrison, Terrell Owens, and Devontae Adams.
All right, we got a big finish today. After boasting on the show that he could easily do it, can Jack make that short field goal? The video's coming up in moments, okay?
I should be able to explain at some point.
You can. First, though, we got to get to the best bets. Teddy, you get us started there.
All right, let's talk about Detroit and New Orleans right now. About 4-point road favorites for Detroit. This Detroit team, 100% perfect this year and dating back to last year, the last 5 coming off a loss. They've been very good at responding to adversity. New Orleans, on the other hand, well, they're 0 for the season, ATS at home. 2 wins with no covers, 2 losses, both by a touchdown or more when they faced superior opposition. So this is not an elite home field, at least not in 2023. And when you look at a fundamental matchup here, Detroit's ability to run the football against a New Orleans team that is struggling to stop the run. Atlanta, more than 200 yards on the ground against New Orleans last week. I'm expecting more of the same here. It's simple. Lay it or don't play it. Give me Detroit.
Jack?
Yeah, I will tell you, I've gone to a couple of different wells, and one of them has been Kansas City and the under. And I believe there's a lot of that personality that's going to continue through the next 2 or 3 weeks. I've lost a couple best bets in a row, but I feel like I'm still on the right side. Las Vegas scored a couple of times early in that game to take a lead. That really took the complexion of the game, made it different. Look for the under in this one. Kansas City and Green Bay, they're not going to let Jordan Love go crazy on Green Bay inside. Andy Reid will keep scoring down. Kansas City, we've talked about how bad they've been in the second half of games. I expect that to continue. 6 of the last 7 under of Kansas City games, and Green Bay, 5 of their last 6 have gone under at home. Let's go under in Kansas City, Green Bay.
All right, now to the video we've been waiting for. Jack swore on the show last week he could kick a short field goal. Let's find out if he could.
Fat Jack here. Number 1, field goal kicker. Let's roll. Oh, there you go.
I never saw that second one.
First of all, I pulled my quad, all right? You know, what's not sexy is that I did kick a couple from a college field goal or college extra point distance and one back further than that, but it wasn't 29 yards. We didn't film those, and then I pulled my quad. So I'm battling back. I will be back and better than ever. Maybe New England might should hire me at some point,
Honestly,
right?
they're having open tryouts. You might as well just head over there. I'm
I've
sure
got the
Bill
jersey
would
for it.
appreciate it. Yeah.
Can I get number 1? I'm not sure who has that, but I need number 1.
Take it. It's all yours.
You sound like the guy in the post-game presser who's just making excuses.